Hello everyone, and welcome to another Trailblazer League video. With the league releasing in less than a day now, I thought it'd be helpful to go over some tips based on things I encountered while making my plans. Now, since we don't know all the tasks and relics, these are more things that will be helpful to consider while trying to plan things out than things that I know for sure. So the first of these is planning out your region. While there are a lot of factors that can go into deciding which regions you want, one thing Mod Husky said that has stuck with me is that you should pick the regions with the content you want to do because the task in that region will be based around its content. For example, Mauritania has Barrows and a Black Mask, but it also has Theater of Blood and Nightmare. So if you don't want to do Theater of Blood or Nightmare, maybe you don't want to pick that region because a lot of points might come from those activities. On the other hand, perhaps you still do want to pick Mauritania because you really want to do Barrows and you're okay with losing some of the points that would come from Nightmare and Theater of Blood. We don't really know how significant this will be for each region until we see the task, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Pick the region with the stuff you want to do because that's likely what's going to matter the most. The next tip is to consider when you want to train skills and especially when you want to do quests because as you progress in the league, you'll unlock an experience rate multiplier from the passive relics. I'll put the passive relics and their effects on screen now, but just the main thing to note is if you do a quest like, let's say, Cook's Assistant, you'll get a good bit of cooking experience that'll be multiplied 5 times. But if you can wait to do it when you get the tier 2 relic, it'll be multiplied 8 times instead. Now, overall this probably won't be too significant since the base experience is boosted anyway, but for some of the bigger quests like let's say Holy Grail, it might even be worth waiting to get 12 times if you don't need to do it sooner. This also applies to trading skills. If you want to grind out something like rune crafting, it might be better to hold off till you get a higher multiplier than to do it sooner, because you'll also use more resources then. So just something else to keep in mind when you're planning things out. While the league will last over 2 months, it is worth considering that certain activities are time-gated. I've already seen a lot of guides on how to rush to birdhouses early on to train Hunter, but in addition to that, the entire farming skill is also time-gated to an extent, especially the bigger things like trees. Aside from that, if you pick Fremnik, the kingdom there will also be time-gated for how many resources you can get. Also, Tears of Guthix is automatically unlocked, so if you want to get experience from that, it's probably better to start sooner than later. The next tip is to try to consider the impact your regions will have on training skills and gathering certain resources. Now this is something where there's a lot of things that are very easy to overlook. For example, in my previous video, someone pointed out how the regions I picked don't have a lot of monsters that drop pure essence, so I might end up having to mine it if I want to train rune crafting, which is something I did not at all consider. Likewise, potions can run into this too because a lot of potion ingredients can be pretty unique to regions. For example, if you want to make ranging potions, you'll need wine of Zamrock, but the only spawns of them are in Asgardia and the Wilderness. You can get some drops from Theater of Blood and KQ, but aside from that, you're going to be pretty low on options. Likewise, Blue Dragon scales can only be obtained from Asgardia and the Myths Guild, so Kandarin and Fremnik together. This is also a problem for other skills. For example, farming has its patches spread all over the world, so depending on the regions you pick, you might not have that many herb patches or tree patches. And on a similar note, if you plan on training prayer with a gilded altar in your player-owned house, keep in mind you can only get gold leaf and marble from Keldagrim, which is part of Fremnik. Another thing that depends on your region choice is Recipe for Disaster. While it's impossible to complete the full quest for Barrows Gloves, certain regions can complete more subquests than others, so if you're planning on using some of the RFT gloves, that is worth keeping in mind. The next tip is related to Slayer. It might be worth trying to train Slayer a bit earlier combat than you might have planned, because in League, Slayer uses a special task list with each region adding some more tasks. Because of this though, your combat level is very significant to what tasks you can get. For example, you'll get a lot of easy tasks below 50 combat, but as you get up in combat levels, you'll start to be assigned more tasks, like Iron Dragons at level 80 combat. So if you want to try and avoid those tasks, or at least build up a bit of Slayer points and Slayer levels before then, it might be worth training before 80. Another thing that is dependent on combat level are the tree spirits in the Enchanted Valley. Since we'll start with access to fairy rings, you can head there right away, and the lower your combat, the easier the tree spirits will be to kill. So if you plan on farming out rune axes or just getting nature runes for Aux later on, this might be something worth doing before you get your combat level up too high. For anyone who picks Asgardia, you might want to consider how you'll get god items for protection in the God Wars dungeon. Saradomin and Zamrock items aren't too hard to come by, but Bandos and Armadillo are a bit hard to get. Next is a tip related to Infernal Eels. While everyone will have access to Karamja, not everyone will be able to fish the Infernal Eels there because you need an oily fishing rod. From what I've seen, there's only 3 ways to obtain this, or I should say 3 regions where you can obtain this. The first one is Asgarnia. If you start Hero's Quest, you will be giving 1 bottle of the Blamish Oil during the quest from an NPC in Port Sarim. If you lose this, I don't think you can get another one, because you're expected to get it yourself, which is done in Mauritania. You can buy a sample bottle there and grind up the snail to make the oil yourself. The only other region I've seen where you can get the oil is Fremnik Province. There are some NPCs that have a very rare 1 in 500 chance to drop a bottle of the oil for some reason. So if you did pick Asgarnia and then picked Fremnik and auto-unlocked Hero's Quest, that will be your only way to get it. So keep that in mind before you auto-complete the quest. Lastly, I have a couple of experience-related tips to end it off. The first is to get some early farming levels. You can rake the weeds out of any farming patch. All you need is a rake, and while it doesn't give a lot of experience, with a 5x multiplier, it will add up quickly and get you your first few farming levels. And since everyone will have access to Fossil Island, it might be worth trying to get the fossils there to fill up the Vrock Museum, since doing this will earn you some experience lamps, which might be very helpful during the League. Also, as a bonus tip, if the Halloween event is available during the League, it might be worth doing it while you can for the Fashionscape. Hopefully there was something in this video that will help you out during the League. Also, in the description I'll include a link to the League Discord, as well as to some helpful spreadsheets that I would suggest checking out. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.